Story outline: The Phoenix Constellation Part 1, The Void Where Home Once Was. Characters: Daven, protagonist, lone survivor. Near a space salvager who finds him. Daven awakens from cryosleep to find his homeworld Kepler-4 to be completely gone, erased by an unknown weapon. Nira, a beautiful salvage captain, rescues him from his drifting escape pod. Their first meeting sparks an immediate connection as she helps him process his devastating loss. Part 2, The Heart of a Dying Star. Characters: Daven, Nira, Nira's engineer, Torvin. Black market information broker. Daven and Nira's relationship deepens as they investigate who destroyed his world. They discover the weapon was called the Stellar Eraser, technology that can delete matter from existence. A romantic subplot develops between Daven and Nira as they work together, finding solace in each other. Part 3, Love Among the Asteroids. Characters: Daven, Nira, Zenth, mysterious alien ally. Mira, Nira's sister. The couple faces their first major test when Nira's estranged sister arrives. With warnings, they discover an ancient alien race. The architects created the technology as a last resort weapon. Daven and Nira's love story intensifies as they realize they may be the key to stopping the weapon. Part 4, The Quantum Heart. Characters: Daven, Nira, Zenth, Joran. Reformed enemy, Echo AI consciousness. Daven learns he carries quantum DNA from exposure to his planet's destruction. With Nira's support, he begins manifesting the ability to manipulate stellar matter. Their bond becomes literally cosmic as their consciousnesses begin to merge through quantum entanglement. Part 5, Birth of a New Sun. Characters: Daven, Nira, all previous characters unite. The final confrontation with those who control the Stellar Eraser. Daven and Nira's love transcends physical form as they work together to create a new star. The story ends with them establishing a new world around their created sun, their love becoming the foundation of a new civilization. Part 1, The Void Where Home Once Was. Cold embrace of cryosleep released Daven Thorn gradually, his consciousness swimming up through layers of artificial dreams toward a reality he wasn't prepared to face. The gentle hum of life support systems filled his ears as sensation returned to his limbs, and the familiar blue glow of the stasis chamber's status lights painted everything in ethereal shades. He had been dreaming of Kepler-4 to be of the amber sunsets that painted the crystal spires of New Geneva, of the singing forests where bioluminescent trees created symphonies of light that could be heard across continents. But something was wrong. The evacuation pods systems should have awakened him when they reached the rendezvous point at the Outer Rim colonies. Instead, emergency lights bathed everything in harsh red, and the navigation display showed coordinates that made no sense. According to the readings, he was drifting in empty space, far from any inhabited system. Daven's fingers trembled as he activated the external sensors, his heart hammering against his ribs. The viewport iris dilated with a soft mechanical whisper, revealing a vista that stole the breath from his lungs and replaced it with ice-cold disbelief. Nothing. Where Kepler-4 to be should have been where his homeworld had orbited. The gentle orange star. For billion years there was only void, not debris, not an asteroid field marking some cosmic catastrophe, just emptiness, as if his planet had never existed at all. No, he whispered, his voice cracking in the pod's recycled air. No, no, no. His hands flew across the control panels, running diagnostic after diagnostic. The sensors were functioning perfectly. The navigation computer confirmed his position with cold precision. This was the exact coordinates of his home system. But Kepler-4 to be was simply gone, erased, as if someone had reached into the universe and deleted it from existence. The pod's communication array crackled to life, scanning for any signal, any sign of other survivors. Static filled the small chamber, broken only by the distant whisper of cosmic background radiation. He was alone in a tomb of stars, the last witness to a world that had been home to 8 billion souls. Grief hit him like a physical blow. His parents, his sister Kira, his childhood friends, the woman he'd been planning to marry when he returned from the geological survey mission, all gone. Not just dead, but erased so completely that space itself seemed to have forgotten they ever existed. The pod's life support chimed a gentle warning. Oxygen reserves were running low. He had perhaps 18 hours before the recycling systems Failed completely. 18 hours to comprehend the impossible. To mourn an entire civilization. To accept that he was the sole survivor of something that defied every law of physics he understood. That's when the salvage ship found him. The vessel that emerged from hyperspace was unlike anything in the standard fleet registries. Its hull was a work of art. Flowing curves of burnished metal that seemed to shift color in the starlight. Decorated with intricate patterns that suggested both high technology and ancient craftsmanship, it moved with the grace of a living thing. Its approach gentle despite the impressive array of sensors and docking equipment visible along its sides. Unknown pod. This is the Free Trader Starweaver. A voice said through his communication system. The speaker was female, her tone warm despite the professional distance. Your beacon indicates life support failure. We're going to bring you aboard. Davin wanted to refuse, to drift here in the void with the memory of his lost world. But survival instincts proved stronger than despair. This is Davin Thorne. He managed. Geological survey team from Kepler for to be. A pause. Then, more gently, we know, Davin. Hold tight. We're bringing you home. The docking process was surprisingly smooth. Magnetic clamps secured his pod to the Starweaver's hull, and he felt the subtle shift as artificial gravity took hold. A airlock cycled with efficient precision, and then he was stepping into a corridor that felt more like stepping into a dream. The ship's interior defied conventional design. Walls curved organically, their surfaces embedded with flowing patterns of light that pulsed in rhythm. With the ship's heartbeat, plants grew in carefully tended alcoves, their leaves shimmering with an inner radiance that spoke of worlds beyond. Imagination. The air itself seemed alive, carrying scents of distant flowers and the ozone crackle of stellar winds. Welcome aboard the Starweaver. Davin turned, and his breath caught. The woman standing before him was perhaps the most beautiful person he'd ever seen. But it wasn't just her physical appearance that stopped him. She radiated a presence that seemed to fill the corridor's strength mixed with compassion. Intelligence, tempered by genuine warmth. Her hair was the color of starlight, shifting between silver and gold as she moved, and her eyes held depths that seemed to contain entire galaxies. I'm Nira Voss, she said, extending a hand. Captain and owner of this ship. I'm sorry we didn't find you sooner. Her touch sent an unexpected jolt through him, not just the electric thrill of attraction, but something deeper, a recognition, as if some part of his soul had been searching for her across the void. Thank you, he said, his voice barely above a whisper. I thought I was going to die out there. You're safe now, Nira assured him, but her expression grew troubled. Davin, I need to ask you something difficult. Your homeworld. What happened to it? The question hit him like a reopened wound. I don't know, he admitted, and the words tasted like ashes. I was on a survey mission to the outer moons when the evacuation order came. Some kind of weapon, they said. Something that could destroy entire worlds. But when I got back, he gestured helplessly toward the viewport. It's just gone, not destroyed. Gone. Like it never existed. Nira's face paled. A stellar eraser, she whispered. A what? Something I hoped was just a legend. She took his arm gently, guiding him toward what appeared to be the ship's common area. Come. You need food, rest, and time to process this. But Davin, she paused, meeting his eyes. You may be the only person in the galaxy who's seen the aftermath of one of those weapons, and lived to tell about it. The common area was as beautifully designed as the rest of the ship, with flowing furniture that seemed to have grown rather than been manufactured. Nira guided him to a chair that molded itself to his body, providing comfort he hadn't felt since leaving his homeworld. She moved to a food synthesizer, her hands dancing across controls with practiced ease. You're not from the inner systems, Davin observed, watching her work. There was something different about her. Something that spoke of distant stars and ancient knowledge. My people are wanderers, she said, bringing him a cup of something that smelled like starflowers and tasted like hope. We've been traveling between worlds since before humans learned to see beyond their own sun. My family has been salvaging lost things for generations, ships, cargo, sometimes people like you. And now you've salvaged the last man from a dead world. She sat across from him, her expression intense. Not dead, Davin. Erased. There's a difference, and it's important. She leaned forward, and he found himself drawn into the constellation of her eyes. Dead things leave traces, memories, echoes in space-time. But erasure, that's something else entirely. Something that shouldn't be possible. But it happened. My whole world, my family, everyone I ever knew. I know. Her hand covered his. And again he felt that spark of connection. I can't imagine the pain you're carrying. But I need you to understand that you surviving this, being here right now, Part 2. The heart of a dying Star Weaver drifted in the shadow of a dead moon. Its hull powered down to minimal emissions while Nira monitored the passive sensors. 3 days had passed since their escape from Davin's home system, and the pursuing ships had finally given up their search. But the reprieve felt temporary. Like the eye of a storm that promised greater fury to come, Davin floated in the ship's small observation bubble, watching the stark landscape of the airless world below. Craters pocked its surface like ancient wounds, and in their depths, the remnants of what might once have been cities caught the pale light of distant stars. Another dead world. Though this one had died naturally, its sun had expanded and cooled over geological time, leaving behind only frozen monuments to a civilization lost to entropy rather than malice. Can't sleep either? Nira's voice came from behind him, soft in the recycled air of the bubble. He turned to find her silhouetted against the corridor's gentle luminescence, her hair loose around her shoulders like spun starlight. She wore a simple ship suit that somehow managed to look elegant on her graceful frame, and in her hands she carried 2 cups of the tea that had become their evening ritual. Every time I close my eyes, I see it, Davin admitted, accepting the warm cup gratefully. The emptiness where home should be. Sometimes I wake up thinking it was all a nightmare, that I'll check the sensors and find Kepler-4 to be right where it belongs. Nira settled beside him in the curved alcove, close enough that he could feel the warmth radiating from her body. Over the past 3 days, they had fallen into an easy intimacy that surprised him with its naturalness. Conversations that flowed like water, comfortable silences that spoke of understanding, and moments like this where words seemed unnecessary. Tell me about it, she said softly. Your world. What was it like? Davin's throat tightened, but he found he wanted to share it with her, to give voice to memories before they faded completely. Beautiful, he began. The cities were built into living crystal formations that grew from the planet's core. They sang in the wind actual music created by the resonance of the crystal structures. At sunset, the whole planet would fill with this incredible harmony. He described the floating gardens of New Geneva, where his sister had worked as a botanical engineer, the vast libraries of Alexandria Prime, where knowledge from 100 worlds was preserved in quantum storage matrices, the small coastal town where he'd grown up, watching the twin moons rise over an ocean that sparkled with bioluminescent organisms. It sounds like paradise, Nira murmured, and he could hear genuine sadness in her voice. It was home. His hand found hers almost without thinking, their fingers intertwining naturally. What about you? Where do your people come from? A shadow crossed her features. Nowhere. Everywhere. We're called the drifters by some, the star-touched by others. My ancestors were explorers who went too far into the deep void and came back. Changed. We don't age like other humans. We don't need planetary homes. The universe itself is our country. That sounds lonely. It was, she admitted, meeting his eyes. Until now. The weight of that admission hung between them, electric and profound. Davin felt his pulse quicken as he recognized the emotion reflected in her galaxy-deep eyes. What had begun as rescue and companionship was becoming something deeper, something that transcended their desperate circumstances. Before he could respond, Kess's voice crackled through the ship's communication system. The Star Weaver's engineer was a compact man with cybernetic enhancements that allowed him to interface directly with the ship's systems, and his timing was notoriously terrible. Captain, you need to see this. I've been analyzing the sensor data from Davin's home system, and I found something. Nira sighed, but her expression sharpened with professional interest. We'll be right there. They made their way to the ship's technical bay, where Kess had transformed one wall into a massive holographic display. Waves of data cascaded through 3's dimensional space, creating patterns that hurt to look at directly. What am I seeing? Davin asked, studying the swirling mathematics that represented the death of his world. Quantum signatures, Kes explained, his enhanced eyes reflecting the display's blue light. When matter is destroyed, it leaves traces, energy patterns, gravitational echoes. But this, he gestured at a section of the data that seemed to fold in on itself impossibly. This is different. It's not destruction, it's negation. I don't understand, Davin said, though something cold was forming in his stomach. Nira was studying the display intently, her face pale. Show him the comparative analysis, Kes, the engineer nodded, and the display shifted to show two side-by-side models. One depicted the normal destruction of a planet, catastrophic, violent, but leaving debris and energy signatures scattered across space. The other showed something far more disturbing, matter simply ceasing to exist, leaving not even quantum foam in its wake. Stellar erasure, Nira said quietly. A technology that doesn't destroy it at its reality itself, removing objects from the universe as if they never existed. That's impossible, Davin protested. Matter can't just disappear. Conservation of energy. Basic physics can be rewritten if you have the right tools. A new voice said from the bay's entrance. They turned to see a figure emerging from the shadows, tall, gaunt, wearing a coat that seemed to absorb light. Torvin was a black market information broker who dealt in secrets too dangerous for legitimate channels. Nira had contacted him during their second day of hiding, hoping he might have answers about the weapon that had destroyed Davin's world. Torvin, Nira said carefully, I wasn't expecting you to board personally. The information broker smiled, revealing teeth that glittered like crystalline stars. When the subject is stellar erasers, personal consultation becomes necessary. Too many ears in space, too many parties interested in this particular technology. You've heard of these weapons before? Davin asked. Heard of them, boy, I've been tracking them for decades. Torvin moved to the display, his long fingers dancing through the holographic data. 3 worlds in the Andromeda sector, a colony ship in the Void Reach, a research station studying dark matter physics, all erased completely, leaving survivors who insisted their homes had simply vanished. Survivors like me, exactly like you. Which raises interesting questions about why you're still alive. Davin felt Nira tense beside him. What do you mean? Stellar erasers aren't random weapons, Torvin explained. They require enormous energy and precision to operate. You don't waste them on accidents or experiments when someone erases a world. They do it for a specific reason, and they make sure. There are no witnesses, but I survived, Davin said. Slowly, yes, you did. In a survey pod that just happened to be at the edge of the system when the weapon fired. A pod equipped with emergency transmitters that broadcast your location to anyone listening. Torvin's smile grew more predatory. Either you're the luckiest man in the galaxy, or someone wanted you to survive. The implications hit Davin like a physical blow. You think someone used me as bait? I think, Torvin said carefully, that your survival serves someone's purpose. The question is whose? Nira stepped closer to Davin, her presence protective and comforting. What else do you know about these weapons? Who controls them, Ma? Now we reach the expensive information. Torvin produced a small device from his Coda quantum storage matrix that pulsed with encrypted data. 10,000 credits. Standard galactic currency. The matrix contains everything I've gathered about stellar erasure technology, including some very interesting theories about its origin. 10,000. Kes whistled low. That's more than our ship's worth. Knowledge of this magnitude has a price commensurate with its danger, Torvin replied smoothly. Nira was quiet for a long moment, studying the information broker with calculating eyes. Finally, she nodded. Transfer the credits. Kes, Captain, do it. The transaction completed. With the soft chime of confirmed payment, Torvin placed the matrix on the display table, where it projected its contents into the holographic field. What they saw made the blood drain from Davin's face. The data painted a picture of technology so advanced it bordered on the mystical. Stellar erasers weren't weapons in any conventional sense. They were reality engines, devices that could rewrite the fundamental code of existence itself. The theoretical power requirements were staggering, requiring the total energy output of multiple stars focused through quantum channels that shouldn't exist. The architects, Nira breathed, reading from one of the files. An ancient race that supposedly transcended physical existence eons ago, Torvin confirmed. According to legend, they created stellar erasure technology as a last resort, a way to remove threats to reality itself from the universe. Threats to reality? Davin asked. Entities or phenomena that could unravel the fabric of spacetime. Cosmic cancers that had to be cut out before they could spread. Torvin's expression grew serious, but the architects vanished long ago. If their technology is being used now, someone has either found their abandoned tools or learned to replicate their work. Nira was studying another section of the data, her brow furrowed with concern. This energy signature analysis, KES, run a comparison with our sensor readings from Davin's system. The engineer's cybernetic implants flashed as he processed the request. WI. Part 3, Love Among the Asteroids. The asteroid field of broken dreams stretched endlessly in all directions. A graveyard of shattered worlds that had once orbited a star now reduced to a cold white dwarf. The Star Weaver moved carefully through the debris, its hull sensors painting detailed maps of the rocky maze that had become a haven for those who lived outside the law. It had been 2 weeks since their encounter with Torvin, and Nira had used every contact in her network to arrange this meeting. Hidden among the asteroids was a research station built into a hollowed-out planetoid, where scientists and refugees worked together to understand the growing threat of stellar erasure technology. There, Nira pointed to a dark mass that seemed to absorb the distant starlight. Sanctuary Station. If anyone has answers about the Void Seekers, it'll be the people there. Davin floated beside her in the pilot's alcove, close enough that their shoulders touched as they navigated through the field. Over the past fortnight, their relationship had deepened in ways that both thrilled and terrified him. What had begun as mutual comfort had evolved into something profound, a connection that seemed to resonate on a quantum level. They had started sharing dreams, not metaphorically, but literally, their sleeping minds touching across space, sharing memories and emotions that belonged to both and neither. Nira claimed it was a side effect of her people's enhanced genetics, but Davin suspected it was something more, something related to his exposure to the erasure event. Incoming transmission, KES announced from the engineering station. Multiple sources were being scanned. The communication array crackled to life, and a familiar voice filled the ship's bridge. Nira Voss, you magnificent star-touched wanderer, it's been too long. Nira's face lit up with genuine joy. Zenth, I should have known you'd be monitoring approach vectors. Someone has to keep track of who's visiting our little sanctuary. Bringing friends, I see. The survivor I told you about. And KES, of course. Ah yes, the man who watched his world disappear. We're very interested in meeting him. Zenth's voice grew more serious. Docket Bay 7. And Nira, be careful. You're not the only ones asking questions about stellar erasers these days. The docking procedure was more complex than Davin expected, involving multiple security scans and identity verifications. When they finally cycled through the airlock into Sanctuary Station, he understood why. The facility was massive, carved from the heart of an asteroid and expanded with corridors that stretched beyond the curve of the horizon. Hundreds of beings from dozens of species worked at research stations, their diverse forms creating a living tapestry of galactic civilization. Welcome to the last free university in the galaxy, said their guide. A tall humanoid with blue-scaled skin and eyes like liquid mercury. I'm Zenth, xenobiologist and general troublemaker. Nira embraced him warmly, and Davin felt an unexpected stab of jealousy. The emotion surprised him with its intensity. He and Nira had made no formal commitments to each other, despite their growing closeness. Zenth helped establish this place. After the universities of Rigel were shut down, Nira explained, noticing his expression. He's one of the few scientists willing to study forbidden technologies. Forbidden for good reason, usually, Zenth replied. But sometimes forbidden knowledge is the only thing standing between civilization and extinction. Come, there's someone you need to meet. They made their way through corridors lined with laboratories where impossible experiments were taking place. In one chamber, researchers manipulated dark matter with bare hands. In another, time itself seemed to flow backward in carefully controlled loops. The air hummed with energy and possibility. "How long has this place existed?" Davin asked, officially. 3 years, unofficially. My people have been gathering forbidden knowledge for centuries. When the stellar erasures began, we knew we had to act. They entered a large amphitheater where dozens of researchers had gathered around a central holographic display. The image showed a three-dimensional map of the galaxy, with points of light marking the locations of known erasure events. The pattern was disturbing, a spiral of destruction that seemed to be moving steadily toward the galactic core. 17 confirmed erasures in the past decade, Zenth explained. Always the same signature, always leaving one or two survivors who report the same thing: their world simply vanished. But why leave survivors? Davin asked. If the goal is complete erasure, why not eliminate witnesses? That, said a new voice, is exactly the right question. They turned to see a woman approaching from the amphitheater's upper levels. She was strikingly beautiful in a way that immediately set Davin on edge, to perfect, to symmetrical, as if designed rather than born. Her movements carried a predatory grace that spoke of enhanced reflexes and hidden weapons. "Davin Thorne," she said, extending a hand. "I'm Mira Voss, Nira's sister." The family resemblance was subtle but unmistakable. Once pointed out, where Nira radiated warmth and life, however, Mira seemed cold and calculating. Her smile never reached her eyes, and when she shook Davin's hand, her grip was just a fraction too strong. "Sister," Nira said carefully, "I wasn't expecting you here. I go where the work takes me. And lately, the work has been very concerned with stellar erasure survivors." Mira's gaze fixed on Davin with uncomfortable intensity. "Especially survivors who exhibit unusual quantum signatures." "What kind of signatures?" Davin asked, though he wasn't sure he wanted to know. Mira activated a portable scanner, its beam washing over him in waves of blue light. The readings that appeared made her eyebrows rise slightly. "Fascinating. You're quantum entangled with something. But the signature is unlike anything I've seen before." Beside him, Nira tensed. "Entangled with what?" "Unknown. But the entanglement is growing stronger. At current rates of increase." Mira paused, recalculating. "Within a few weeks, you'll be more quantum energy than matter." The amphitheater fell silent as the implications sank in. Davin felt the universe tilt around him, the comfortable reality of flesh and blood suddenly seeming fragile and temporary. "What does that mean?" he whispered. "It means," Zenth said quietly, "that you're changing, evolving into something new, and it might be connected to your exposure to the erasure event. It also means," Mira added with clinical detachment, "that you're becoming extremely valuable to certain parties. The Void Seekers aren't the only ones interested in erasure survivors." Nira moved protectively closer to Davin, her hand finding his. The contact sent the familiar spark of connection between them. But now he could feel something more quantum. Patterns aligning, consciousness touching consciousness across dimensional barriers he didn't understand. "Who else is looking for him?" Nira demanded. "The Synthesis Collective. They believe erasure survivors are the key to ascending beyond physical existence. The Eternal Empire wants to weaponize whatever process is changing you. And there are others, shadow organizations that don't even have names. Everyone wants a piece of the man whose world was deleted," Davin said bitterly. "Not everyone," Nira said firmly. "I want you safe. I want you whole. I want you to be whatever you choose to become, not what others try to make you." Their eyes met, and in that moment the amphitheater full of researchers seemed to fade away. The connection between them blazed brighter, and Davin felt his consciousness expand to touch hers. For an instant, he saw himself through her eyes, not as a specimen or a weapon, but as the man she was falling in love with. "How touching," Mira said with barely concealed disgust. "But romance won't save you from what's coming. The changes accelerating in your body will eventually consume your human consciousness entirely. You'll become something else, something that might not remember what it was like to love a mortal woman." "That's enough," Nira snapped, but Davin could feel the fear radiating from her. Fear that her sister might be right. Zenth cleared his throat diplomatically. Perhaps we should focus on more immediate concerns, like the Void Seeker ships that have been asking questions in nearby systems. They're close, Davin asked. 3 systems away and closing. My sources indicate they're tracking quantum signatures specifically. Signatures like yours. Zenth activated the main display, showing ship movements throughout the local sector. You have perhaps a day before they narrow down your location. Then we run, Nira said immediately. Running won't solve the fundamental problem, Mira interrupted. He's a beacon now, broadcasting his location to anyone with the right sensors. Eventually, someone will catch you. What do you suggest? Davin asked. Though he dreaded the answer, Mira smiled. And this time the expression reached her eyes cold and calculating. You let me take you somewhere safe. Somewhere the collective can study your condition and possibly reverse it. Absolutely not, Nira said flatly. It's not your choice to make, sister, it's his. All eyes turned to Davin, and he felt the weight of decision pressing down on him. Stay with Nira and remain a fugitive, always running from forces that wanted to use him. Or trust Mira and face an uncertain fate at the hands of unknown scientists. I need time to think, he said finally. Time is the one thing you don't have, Mira replied. But I'll give you 1 hour to consider your options. She departed with the same predatory grace she'd shown on arrival, leaving the others in uncomfortable silence. She's right about one thing, Zenth said eventually, running. Part 4. The Quantum Hearth Transformation Chamber deep within Sanctuary Station, hummed with energies that existed at the intersection of science and impossibility. Crystalline matrices lined the walls, their surfaces alive with patterns that hurt to look at directly, while streams of quantum data flowed through holographic displays like liquid mathematics. At the center of it all, Davin lay suspended in a field of pure energy, his body slowly dissolving into patterns of light and consciousness. Quantum coherence holding at 97%, announced Dr. Lisa Chen, the station's chief researcher, her hands dancing across controls that existed partially in normal space and partially in dimensions folded beyond perception. Neural patterns remain stable, but we're seeing unprecedented integration with the architect substrate. 3 days had passed since Davin made his choice, and the metamorphosis was proceeding faster than anyone had anticipated. His physical form flickered between solid matter and translucent energy, while his consciousness expanded to touch realms that existed beyond the normal flow of time and space. Nira stood at the chamber's observation window, her hands pressed against the transparent aluminum as she watched the man she loved transform into something beyond human understanding. The connection between them had grown stronger as his change progressed, but it was also becoming something alien. Touches of thought that carried the weight of stellar distances, emotions that resonated across multiple dimensions. He's still in there, she whispered, though she wasn't sure if she was trying to convince the others or herself. Yes, Echo confirmed, the ancient architect entity standing beside her like a pillar of shifting starlight. But he is becoming more than there can contain. Soon, he will exist across multiple states of reality simultaneously. Through their quantum bond, Nira felt Davin's consciousness brush against hers. The touch was familiar yet strange, carrying warmth that felt like starlight and love that transcended physical sensation. In that contact, she glimpsed what he was experiencing, a universe revealed in its true complexity, where every atom sang with possibility and consciousness flowed like rivers of living light. I can see them, his mental voice whispered across. Their connection, my people, my world. They're trapped in a cage made of pure thought, unable to touch reality or dream of change. Can you reach them? Nira projected back, her own consciousness stretching to follow his into realms her human mind could barely comprehend. Not yet, but soon. The pathways are becoming clear. Their communion was interrupted by urgent alarms throughout the station. Kess's voice crackled through the communication system, tight with tension. Captain, we have multiple hyperspace signatures dropping out of FTL. Big ones. The Void Seekers, Nira asked, though she already knew the answer. 6 ships, heavy cruiser class. They're broadcasting on all frequencies, demanding we surrender. Davin immediately. Echo's form solidified slightly, taking on more human characteristics as ancient systems activated throughout the entity's consciousness. They have found us sooner than anticipated. The transformation must be accelerated. Is that safe? Dr. Chen asked, her eyes reflecting the chamber's impossible energies. Safety is no longer a consideration, Echo replied grimly, if the void seekers capture him now, while he exists in multiple states simultaneously, they could use his quantum signature to complete their great erasure immediately. In the transformation chamber, Davin's form began to pulse with brighter light as the process accelerated. His consciousness expanded rapidly, touching the borders of the transcendent realm where his world waited in its prison of pure thought. But the forced acceleration was creating instability's quantum storms that threatened to tear his expanding awareness apart. Nira, Dr. Chen called urgently. We need to stabilize his consciousness. The quantum entanglement between you might be enough to anchor him during the final phase. What do I need to do? Enter the chamber. Let your minds fully merge. But understand, once you make that connection, you'll be changed too, not as extensively as Davin, but you'll never be entirely human again. Nira didn't hesitate. The chamber's field parted like water as she approached, allowing her to step into the swirling energies that surrounded Davin's transforming form. The moment she crossed the threshold, reality exploded into infinite complexity around her. She was suddenly aware of every quantum possibility, every potential future branching from this moment like the limbs of an impossible tree. She felt Davin's consciousness wrapping around hers, protecting her from the worst of the transformation energies, while drawing strength from their connection. Together, he whispered across dimensions that had no names. Always, she replied, and their minds touched so completely that for a moment there was no distinction between them. The merger sent cascades of energy through both their forms. Nira felt her consciousness expanding, touching the edges of transcendence while remaining anchored in physical reality. She was becoming a bridge between realms, just as Davin was becoming a gateway between states of existence. Outside the chamber, new alarms began sounding. The Void Seeker ships had begun their attack, pouring destructive energy into Sanctuary Station's shields. The ancient asteroid shuddered under the assault, its quantum-enhanced structure holding, but showing signs of strain. We're being boarded, Kess reported. Multiple breaches throughout the station. They're sending in termination squads. Mira Voss appeared at the chamber's entrance, her perfect features tight with urgency. Sister, you need to get out of there. I can protect you, but not if you're merged with the quantum field. I'm not leaving him, Nira said firmly, her voice carrying harmonics that hadn't been there before. Then you'll die with him when the Void Seekers destroy this place. No, said a new voice, deep and resonant with cosmic authority. They will transcend. The figure that materialized in the chamber was unlike anything any of them had seen before. Tall and imposing, with features that seemed carved from living starlight. It radiated power that made the air itself sing with harmonics. When it spoke, reality seemed to bend around its words. I am Joran, Architect Prime of the Stellar Assembly. I have come to witness the birth of the new paradigm. Echo's form brightened with what might have been joy or terror. Prime Joran, but you achieved full transcendence eons ago. Why have you returned to physical space? Because the work we began so long ago was incomplete, Joran replied, his attention focused on Davin and Nira's merged forms. We sought to preserve consciousness by removing it from the constraints of matter. Instead, we created prisons of pure thought. This one, he gestured to Davin, shows us the path we should have taken. Through their expanded consciousness, Davin felt the Architect Prime's attention like the warmth of a star. In that touch, he understood the true scope of what he was becoming, not just a bridge between realms, but a new form of existence entirely, one that could touch transcendence without abandoning the physical universe. Show me, Joran's ancient mind whispered. Show me how love creates what power alone could not. Davin opened his transforming consciousness completely, revealing the quantum bond that connected him to Nira. The Architect Prime studied the connection with the intensity of eons, and slowly, something like wonder crept into his stellar features. Remarkable, he murmured. Love as a quantum force, emotion as a bridge between states of being. We never considered. The station shuddered again as the Void Seeker assault intensified. Through the walls, they could hear the sounds of combat as defenders fought against boarding parties. But, in the transformation chamber, something unprecedented was taking place. Davin's form began to stabilize, his consciousness finding equilibrium between human awareness and transcendent possibility. But instead of losing his connection to physical reality, the bond with Nira was pulling him back, creating a new state of existence that had never been achieved before. He was becoming quantum incarnata, being capable of existing simultaneously in multiple dimensions while remaining grounded in love and physical sensation. Through him, the barriers between transcendent and mortal began to dissolve. The pathway opens, Joran declared, his own form beginning to change as he touched the bridge Davin was creating. The prison realms can be accessed. The erased worlds can be restored. I can see it. Davin projected to all present, his expanded awareness revealing vistas of possibility that stretched across space and time. The great erasure wasn't destruction, it was translation. Every erased world exists in a parallel dimensional space, waiting to be brought back. But the Void Seekers control the mechanism, Nira realized. Her own consciousness now expanded enough to perceive the cosmic architecture that held the translated worlds. They're using the erased civilizations as fuel for their reality engines. Then we must stop them, Joran said, his ancient voice carrying the weight of stellar ages. And for the first time in eons, I believe it is possible. The chamber filled with blinding light as Davin completed his transformation. When the radiance faded, he stood before them changed but recognizable, still human in form, but shot through with patterns of living starlight. His eyes held galaxies, and when he moved, space itself seemed to ripple around him. But more importantly, when Nira took his hand, the connection between them blazed with power that made the chamber's quantum matrices sing. Their love had. Part 5. Birth of a new sun. Space above Sanctuary Station had become a canvas of impossible beauty. Reality rippled like water as dimensional barriers dissolved, revealing glimpses of the transcendent realm where 17 erased worlds existed in their prison of pure thought. Through the quantum bridge that Davin and Nira had become, these lost civilizations began their journey back to physical existence. But the process was not without resistance. Prime Joran, Echo called urgently from the station's command center, its ancient form flickering with alarm. We're detecting massive energy buildups throughout the Void Seeker fleet. They're preparing to activate something far more powerful than conventional weapons. The Architect Prime's stellar features darkened with recognition. The final eraser, a weapon designed to unmake the quantum substrate itself, reducing everything within a star system to absolute nothingness. In the transformation chamber, Davin felt the approaching threat like ice in his expanded consciousness. Through his connection to the transcendent realm, he could see the weapon's true purpose, not just to destroy the restoration process, but to sever the pathways between dimensions, permanently trapping the erased worlds forever. How long? Nira asked, her hands still intertwined with his, their merged consciousness working to stabilize the returning worlds. Minutes. Joran replied grimly, perhaps less. Davin closed his transformed eyes, his awareness stretching across the dimensional bridge to touch the minds of his people trapped in the transcendent realm. They were so close to freedom, but the final eraser would cut the connection before the restoration could complete. We need more power, he projected to Nira through their quantum bond, more consciousness to anchor the bridge. The other survivors, she realized, if we could connect to them all simultaneously throughout the galaxy. 17 other beings like Davin existed, survivors of erased worlds who carried quantum imprints from their exposure to stellar erasure technology. If they could be linked together, their combined consciousness might be enough to complete the restoration before the final eraser fired. Zenth, Nira called to the xenobiologist. Do you still have contact with the other research stations? Some of them. Why? We need to create a galaxy-spanning quantum network. Link every erasure survivor to our bridge. Zenth's scaled features paled. The energy requirements would be enormous, and the risk to the survivors, the risk of not trying is greater, Davin said. his voice carrying harmonics that made the station's quantum matrices resonate. "Help us reach them." What followed was the most ambitious communication attempt in galactic history, using Sanctuary Station's research equipment enhanced by architect technology. They began reaching out across space to touch the minds of scattered survivors, one by one, consciousness connected to consciousness, creating a web of quantum entanglement that spanned thousands of light years. On a mining colony in the Vega system, a woman named Talia felt her dreams suddenly expand to encompass vistas of impossible beauty. She had been the sole survivor when her homeworld of Pristine was erased 6 months ago, and the quantum imprint in her DNA began to resonate with the growing network. In the research labs of New Princeton, a scientist called Marcus Pausden. His work as his consciousness touched something vast and welcoming. His world of scholar's rest had been erased 2 years ago, but through the quantum bridge, he could suddenly sense it waiting in the transcendent realm, ready to return. Across the galaxy, 15 other survivors felt the call and answered, adding their quantum signatures to the growing network. Each connection strengthened the bridge, allowing more of the erased worlds to begin their journey back to physical existence. But the Void Seekers were not passive observers of this restoration. "Enemy fleet is moving into attack formation," Kess reported from the Starweaver, which had taken position near the station's defensive perimeter. "The lead ship is charging some kind of massive weapon." Through the chamber's observation windows, they could see the Void Seeker flagship, a vessel so dark it seemed to devour light itself. At its heart, energy was building to levels that made space itself writhe in distress. 30 seconds to firing, Dr. Chen announced, her instruments tracking the weapon's charge cycle. Davin felt a moment of despair as he realized the mathematics of the situation. Even with 17 survivors linked in quantum harmony, the restoration process would take at least 2 minutes to complete. They would be destroyed before the first world fully materialized. That's when Mira Voss made her choice. "I'm sorry, sister," she said quietly, activating a device she had kept hidden throughout the crisis. "But I won't let you sacrifice yourself for impossible dreams." The device was a quantum disruptor, designed to sever consciousness from the transcendent realm by force. As it activated, the bridge between dimensions began to collapse, cutting Davin off from the erased worlds and pulling Nira back toward normal human existence. "Mira, no," Nira screamed, but her sister's expression was resolute. "I'm saving you from your own compassion," Mira replied. "These worlds are gone. Accept it and live." But as the disruptor worked to sever the quantum connections, something unexpected happened. The other 17 survivors, feeling the bridge collapse, made a collective decision that changed everything. Instead of allowing themselves to be disconnected, they chose to merge their consciousness completely with the network. One by one, across the galaxy, their physical forms dissolved into pure quantum energy that flowed through space to join the bridge that Davin and Nira had created. "What are they doing?" Dr. Chen gasped, watching as energy readings spiked beyond all previous measurements. "They're giving up their individual existence," Echo observed with something like awe. Becoming part of the bridge itself, the influx of consciousness created a cascade effect. The quantum bridge didn't just stabilize, it expanded, becoming something far greater than the sum of its parts. Suddenly, the connection to the transcendent realm was strong enough not just to restore the erased worlds, but to fundamentally alter the relationship between physical and spiritual existence. "The final eraser is firing," Jorn announced, his ancient voice tight with tension. The weapon's energy beam lanced out from the Void Seeker flagship, a column of absolute negation that sought to unmake the quantum substrate itself. But when it struck the bridge that Davin and the other survivors had become, something impossible occurred. Instead of being destroyed, the beam was transformed. The power meant to erase existence instead became fuel for creation, channeled through the quantum bridge to accelerate the restoration process. "Impossible," Mira breathed, her disruptor device sparking and failing as energies beyond its capacity to contain flowed through the chamber. In the transcendent realm, 17 worlds began their final journey back to physical existence. But they were not returning unchanged. The love that had created the quantum bridge, the sacrifice of the survivors who had given up individual existence, to become part of something greater, and the transformed energy of the final eraser had combined to create something unprecedented. The returning worlds carried with them a new form of existence matter that was also consciousness, physical reality that could touch the transcendent without losing its connection to life and growth and change. "Look," Nira whispered, her hands still joined with Davin's as they watched through the chamber's windows. Space above the station was filling with light as the first world completed its transition. Kepler 4 to be materialized like a jewel carved from living starlight, its crystal cities singing with harmonies that could be heard across dimensions. But this was not the world that had been erased. It was something far more beautiful. The planet pulsed with quantum consciousness, its every atom aware and alive. The beings who lived upon its surface existed simultaneously in physical and transcendent states, capable of touching both realms without losing their essential humanity. "It's perfect," Davin said, his own transformed consciousness touching the minds of his people as they awakened to their new existence. Through the bridge, he felt their joy, their wonder, their love for the reality they had helped to create. One by one, the other 16 worlds followed. Each emergence sent waves of transformation through local space, creating pockets of reality where the old boundaries between matter and spirit no longer applied. But the transformation was not limited to the erased worlds. Quantum cascade is spreading throughout the system, Dr. Chen reported, her voice filled with wonder. Every planet, every moon, every inhabited station is being affected. The wave of change spread outward from Sanctuary Station like ripples on a cosmic pond. Worlds that had never been erased found themselves enhanced, their inhabitants suddenly capable of perceiving reality in its full complexity. Love became a tangible force. Creativity gained the power to reshape matter, and consciousness itself became a fundamental aspect of physics. "The new paradigm," Joran said, his ancient form beginning to shift as he too was touched by the transformation. Not transcendence through abandonment of the physical, but synthesis of all states of being. In the aftermath of the cascade, the Void Seeker fleet found itself fundamentally changed. Ships designed for erasure became vessels of creation. Crews dedicated to negation discovered the joy of bringing new realities into existence. The final eraser itself was transformed in